folks. I'm glad to see everybody here. We are here today with another episode from Auntie K. I am Auntie K, or Krista Demore Flute. I am a Lakota and Cajun tarot reader and deck creator. I've also spent my life at this point, over 30 years in activism for Indigenous rights. And I spent a lot of time talking about decolonization and white supremacy, racism, and diversity. And that certainly has thankfully, wonderfully crossed over into tarot. And I am so excited to be in the tarot community for these conversations. So diversity is a conversation we're having a lot in tarot in these last few years. And we talk about the need for diverse decks, the importance of diversity and inclusion in decks. And alongside that has propped up a debate or comments about artistic license, creative freedom, and, do I have to be inclusive? What if I don't know how to be inclusive? What if I don't want to make sure and put in the work or the attention of including an aspect of life I am unfamiliar with? Here's the deal. Diversity and inclusion isn't actually optional, because you don't simply opt out of inclusion. It's an issue of two choices. You are either choosing inclusion or you are choosing exclusion. And that's a conversation that needs to happen. Is it okay to exclude people of color? Is it okay to exclude trans people, queer people, gender non-conforming people? You're not choosing between inclusion and non-inclusion. You are choosing between inclusion and exclusion. And exclusion is the basis of white supremacy. That's what you are choosing when you choose to not be inclusive. You are choosing exclusion. I am choosing to exclude gay people. I am choosing to exclude gender non-conforming people. I am choosing to exclude trans people. I am choosing to exclude Black people, Indigenous people, Arab people, Asian people. It's exclusion. And that's what white supremacy is. Exclusion based on these sorts of identities of sex and race did not exist before the 1400s. It was created in the creation of colonialism, capitalism, and white supremacy. There's plenty of things people were excluded on, but not those things. And we think they were because our history has been written in the era of white supremacy. It has been interpreted in the era of white supremacy, so we've been told to believe these things existed forever. It's human nature. Not true. Okay. And so exclusion came in. That was the purpose of white supremacy, to exclude people who did not fit the new order of capitalism, which was white supremacy. And so that's what you are choosing. If you say, as an artist, I have the creative freedom to say, I don't want to put these people in my deck. I am, as a tarot reader, have the freedom to choose that I want to read with decks that don't include these people. Oh, but I didn't do it on purpose. That's the nature of white supremacy. is inclusion is something that must be chosen, and exclusion is a natural normative existing state. And if you are not choosing to fight white supremacy, then you are choosing to uphold white supremacy. If you are not choosing to fight transphobia or homophobia, then you are choosing to accept them, to maintain the natural order. And we should know this already. We talk about it in other forms. We talk about it in terms of racism outside of tarot with some regularity, that you can't simply be non-racist. You must be anti-racist. You're not doing anything about racism by simply saying, I don't agree with it, but I'm going to continue to uphold it and manufacture it and replicate it. And that's what is happening when you don't choose inclusion. You are maintaining exclusion. So yes, it is a problematic choice. It is a problematic choice. And I've said before, and I'm going to say it again. If you don't have Black, brown, indigenous, people of color friends, if you don't have queer friends, trans friends, gay friends, bi friends, lesbian friends, intersex friends, it's not just because there's none living in your tiny hamlet, town, village, city, metropolis. Because we are discussing these things on the internet with the whole entire world. So if these people aren't your friends and aren't in your internet circles, it's because you have chosen exclusion again and again and again. It's because you have chosen others who choose exclusion again and again and again, and we see we're not safe in your presence. So, inclusion, I mean, obviously it's a choice, but it's not a choice between I'm equally good if I choose inclusion as if I don't. Because if I don't, I am choosing exclusion, which is the definition of white supremacy. And that's why inclusion is important. And that's why we get heated about it. And that's why it's an issue that we won't let go. Because when you are not choosing inclusion, you are still choosing white supremacy. When you are not actively being anti-racist, actively being anti-homophobic, actively being anti-transphobic, actively being anti-ableist, when you're not doing those things, you are performing white supremacy. And that's really what it comes down to. And it's difficult to see it that way. We don't want to see it that way because exclusion is the normative. It is your normal everyday life. It's how you shop. It's how you act. It's how you breathe. It's how you talk. It's how you consume. And it's how we create. Unless we actively choose otherwise and actively look to improve. I'm not saying this in a glass house. I see places in my inclusive brown indigenous deck where the next deck I make needs more work to actively unpack my white supremacy, because there's not a person on the planet, well, there are some people there's not a person like that any of us know that haven't been raised to be white supremacists no matter what color we are. We have to unpack that. As Black, brown, indigenous people of color, we realize and we know that. It's easier to discount it if you have my skin color, but you still get made aware of it on a regular basis. And I have to actively choose not to do that. Every single one of us do. So white people, if the rest of us have to unpack and actively work to not be white supremacists, you most certainly do. You do. It's not a creative option because it's one or the other. This is something that is black and white. And just like racism, that black and white, that binary exists because your forebears created it and you have not yet dismantled it. And that's my that's my rant of the day, folks. But it's important. And it is important that we have this discussion in tarot over and over and over again until we get through it. Thank you for joining me, everybody. I do hope we have constructive criticism in the comments. I do encourage white folks to do a lot more listening than talking. The talking you should do should not be defensive. It should be self-questioning and looking for further insight, because your opposing opinion is a conflict of interest because you are naturally benefiting from white supremacy. So rather than defending, you need to be part of the conversation here to learn and unpack. So let's get at her.